What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Ernie Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, which is literally two kinds of first, being the first official video post hitting 50,000 subscribers. I want to say once again, thank you to everyone, the lovers, the haters, the candlestick makers, every last single one of you, the lurkers, the stands, the fans, and everybody in the between all that. I want to say thank you for helping this channel be a success story, and now it is only a matter of time before we reach 100,000 subscribers. So I want to make sure you guys know I'm not stopping. It can't stop. It won't stop. We ain't shutting the studio down. This is also a first, in that this is the first issue in the first major crossover since House of X, 10 of Swords by Jonathan Hickman, Antini Howard, and Pepe Larraz. Today we were talking about 10 of Swords, creation number 1, and we're gonna break this bad boy down page by page, rung by damn rung, and I promise you, I was right. What was I right about? We'll talk about all that and more right now, but first, wash your damn hands! And let's hit that intro.
Word to wise, grass only greener when it's fertilized. Gave them truth in these songs, they prefer to lies. Destiny beautiful, adrift in her purple lies. You can't see me, you Stevie, wondering how I reach more evolutions than Evie and make it look easy.
Before we get started, if you want to see more awesome comic book videos like this one, it only takes 2 clicks to become one of Earth's mightiest subscribers. Click.
Okay, 10 of Swords, creation number 1. This bad boy kicks off with a quote that I think is very indicative of the character Saturnine, because, well, it is Saturnine, but this, I think, if you are unfamiliar with her character, I think this quote is probably the best introduction to who she is as a person, as a character that we have seen throughout the history of Marvel Comics, and even more recently in Antini Howard's Excalibur. And that is, all I see, I own, and I am unsatisfied with the state of things. The reason why is because Apocalypse's original recipe horsemen, the original 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, the same ones who were promised to us in, I believe it was Marvel 1000, and of course also promised in the Powers of 10 sector of House of X, they have pulled up and they have come to what is the last thing standing in their way, the Starlight Citadel. We see that they've already taken down Del Delore, the last watchtower in the kingdom of Dryador, one of the many different regions of Otherworld. When we see the original 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, they are exactly like what we expect. Yes, we've kind of already seen some of this in, was it the Free Comic Book Day preview of 10 of Swords, the most notable among them being Death and War, who I think get the most panel time out of any of them. The other 2, whose names I don't think were actually given, but I think it's safe to say that they could definitely be Pestilence and Famine, most likely. Maybe Strife, I have no idea. We haven't been told yet. But they have taken down the last watchtower, and the kingdom has tried to send word to Queen Saturnine, the magistrix of Otherworld, though when they do, the one who I think is either Pestilence or the closest thing to it, she sends an arrow through the back of the runner who is trying to get word to the Starlight Citadel, one that has infected that person with a terrible sickness, one that has actually spread to anyone who's touched him. Something that Queen Saturnine is warned about when she tries to approach him. And though initially she doesn't understand what he's trying to tell her at first, because she keeps having to ask him to repeat himself, eventually he screams that Araco has fallen. And the second that this is said, she says that she needs to see the cards. Now, we have actually seen this scene play out before, but this time the dialogue has actually been switched up some. The dialogue was actually intentionally made vague in the Free Comic Book Day version, and you can kind of see it especially in the page that shows Genesis and Annihilation. The dialogue is completely different. Where in the Free Comic Book Day version, she says the words disillusionment and abandonment. That which was once the harmonious lifting of voices is now a mocking echo and then silence. Whereas in the actual version of this, she says that someone's heart has been left empty. She has been wanting for something more. Will she turn away? will she be turned away? A woman like this keeps her cup close. Kind of lending more credence that this Genesis and Annihilation are actually the same person and that Summoner was lying, or at the very least, didn't know what the he was talking about. And I'm gonna go to right now, we're actually gonna talk about that here in a little bit because I warned y'all something about Summoner. We're gonna get to it here in a minute. I'm not gonna bury the lead here. But as Saturnine goes through the cards, these are basically some of the things that she warned us about in that free comic book day video. The card of Judgment, the card of the Four of Wands, the Hanged Man, and the Eight of Cups, the Ten of Swords. Everything she has warned us about. That in the card of Judgment, that the death of death and the new way forward. Talking about how the X-Men, now the mutants on Krakoa, have found a way to circumvent death and have basically changed the natural order of things on their planet, at least for themselves. And then when bringing up the Four of Wands, talking about a family that has been fighting for eons, has one final confrontation before they rest over the ashes of the defeated. One of the things I actually think was very interesting here in this line is that she says that they crave the last battle and the spoils of victory. They have built a hard home and one must dwell within. Basically referring to the fact that they have become hardened by the things that they have done. They have become forever and irrevocably changed by being trapped in a Rocco for all those years, those centuries, those millennia. They have literally become probably the worst possible versions of themselves because of the things that they've had to do. Not to say that they were great people beforehand, but let's just go ahead and be honest with ourselves. They're probably far worse now than what they were before, and that is a direct result of what they've had to endure. And that said, they now have to wallow in pretty much the bed that has been laid out for them. And then when going back to the card, the Hanged Man, basically saying that here no men hang, but something has been suspended indeed. Time, natural laws, and earthly attachments. These are also references to things that the mutants have accomplished since House of X. She says that they bring themselves here to the game at the gallows. What do they wager to lose? And the reason why these characters are shown is because they are ultimately going to become the characters who will be maybe not so much all the major players in this, but a good number of them will be present throughout the proceedings of this storyline. And then of course we see here with the Ten of Swords, and this is the part where she talks about my light in the darkness, something I've long desired, flickers just out of reach. But for the ones who hold the blades, a great match lights the darkness indeed. Now, when I was on Comic Book Herald's channel, we talked about the possibility of one of these characters who are depicted here carrying the swords. And by the way, these swords, we do know the 10 of swords is actually more like a 20 of swords, but doesn't roll off the tongue because there are 10 swords, but 10 swords that each side must have. And we do know for a fact what those 10 swords are. We know that they are, of course, we knew about the Muramasa blade that Wolverine wields. We know that the Sword of Might is the sword of Captain Britain. The Starlight Sword, I believe it's safe to say, is a part of the Starlight Citadel. The Grass Cutter and God Killer swords are, if I'm not mistaken, are respective of the Greek and Japanese gods from Black Axe and Daredevil Ninja. The Soul Sword is, of course, Illyana's weapon that she got during her time in Limbo. The Light of Galador is from Rom the Space Knight, and of course Cable is the current wielder of it. And then of course we have Skybreaker and Scarab, which those I'm a little less familiar with. Skybreaker, part of me wants to wonder if that's some kind of allusion to Swordmaster or Arrow or somebody like that. I don't know, I don't think that's the case, and I'm pretty sure we'll learn all of those eventually. But do notice that the characters who are shadowed out, I do wonder if one of those characters is actually going to betray one, the rest of the group, as we talked about on Comic Book Herald's 10 of Swords live stream. When we talked about it, that was one of the things, and we do believe that Douglas Ramsey is on that behind Apocalypse, and he is the one character who's not featured on a cover for New Mutants. It's actually Warlock who is featured, we know this now, and it does make me wonder, because it does take place after 10 of Swords, that something happened to Douglas. That said, we learn even more from the character Tarot. Tarot has also been pulling the exact same cards that Saturnine has. Not only has Saturnine been pulling them, but so too has Tarot's cousin Lion. Not only has Lion been picking up these same exact cards, but so too has his landlady's wife, all of which are adepts in the realm of the arcane and mystic arts. And Taro even reveals that this is something that, I mean, granted, even to someone who is not trained in the mystic arts and even someone who is even less familiar with tarot, I think if you fit the bill on any one of those things I just mentioned, I think even you would be able to tell that something is awry here, because like Taro says, this is about as likely as someone pulling the same hand of poker 3 times in a row and then finding out that your cousin did the exact same thing. Even myself, I'm vaguely familiar with tarot. I'm not, hyper experienced in it, but I know enough about it to know a thing or two about a thing or two. And even for me, I immediately thought like, yeah, this is ominous. This is something that if everyone is pulling the same thing, especially the exact same cards that Queen Saturnine is pulling, because those are what tarot pulls: Judgment, the 4 of Wands, the Hanged Man, the 8 of Cups, and the 10 of Swords. And she agrees that whomever this is meant for, this is serious. I know there's a lot to unpack here in this, and I apologize this video is over long. However, the thing is that when we get back to Krakoa, we learn that when Apocalypse sends Summoner, Eunice the Untouchable, and Banshee through the external gate, something bad happened. Summoner comes back, crashes back from the other side of the external gate on the back of some Cthulhu-like monster, and only he and Banshee are along for the ride. Banshee has been mortally wounded, and they have to get him help. Now, we'll get back to Banshee here in a minute, because I don't want to bury the lead on this one. Apocalypse is going to bring Summoner before the Quiet Council, which apparently this is the first time he's ever let them know that Summoner is on the island. Now, technically, Cyclops, Prestige, and Cable, they were aware of this, but no one else apparently was, and they didn't say anything about it, which I think is odd. But Apocalypse introduces Summoner, and this goes about the way one would expect with the Quiet Council, because everyone is a little bit annoyed. The fact that Apocalypse had the unmitigated gall to create the external gate without even actually saying anything to anybody or asking whether or not it was okay to do so. More importantly, Magneto even points out that he's fairly certain that Apocalypse didn't make this gate at the cost of some other mutants, basically alluding to the fact that Apocalypse used the externals, the deaths of the externals, their remains, whom he had Richter murder to make this gate. It seems like Magneto is maybe not fully aware of what all has gone on, but he seems to be at least keenly aware that Apocalypse was up to something, and he wouldn't be surprised to find out if the externals fell as a result of it. But the thing that Apocalypse does, and this is a move I didn't expect Apocalypse to pull, but one that actually pays so many dividends. Apocalypse says that, okay, yeah, I did what I did, but no one else has had to ask for permission to plant a single flower in any place that they have deemed fit. Wolverine, we've seen him plant flowers in different places. We've seen Cable plant flowers in different places. We've seen the Cuckoos. We've seen various and sundry other characters plant flowers to get to the places they want to go, and even put them in places where they probably shouldn't even bother, because we kind of learned that no one else can use the gates except for mutants. I mean, well, other than, Horde culture, they know how to use them. But that said, Apocalypse brings up a very good point. Why am I in trouble? Why should I be the one who has to ask for permission when no one else has? And once again, Apocalypse pulls a G-check move I didn't expect him to pull. He says, ask Krakoa what Krakoa wants. And Krakoa, much to the surprise of even Douglas Ramsey, even to the surprise of Cypher, says, yeah, I'm okay with this. Krakoa acknowledges and accepts the gift that Apocalypse has offered it. And Apocalypse knew this would be the case. He says that he offered this as thanks for the island being his refuge and being his providence. And then he explains to them what Krakoa originally was, something I've already talked about and I'm not going to rehash it here, but just basically know that Krakoa used to be a bigger island and was a part of something called Arakko, and the two together, they create Okara. I have other videos that talk about it, so if you want to know more about it, I talk about it in much more depth there. I'll link them in the cards or something. But Summoner gives his account of what happened. He basically reveals that when they got to the other side of the gate, they saw the Starlight Citadel, and the Starlight Citadel was already being beset upon by the forces of Arakko. And that when they fought, Banshee was wounded, as we saw, and Eunice was taken prisoner. And that before they could lose any more of themselves, Summoner saw fit to take them back through the gate. Now, I won't lie, a lot of the other characters, the characters like Mr. Sinister, Emma Frost, Sebastian Shaw, they all have about roughly the expressions you would expect for them to have. Emma Frost seems to be kind of vaguely annoyed by, the proceedings that have happened. Sebastian Shaw just wants to shut the gate. Storm and Jean Grey want to send in a team to go back and retrieve Eunice. And of course, when Apocalypse basically agrees to go through the gate himself and, stop whatever could possibly come back through that gate, Mr. Sinister feels like they should just close the gate behind him, which of course Exodus even points out that there is something more ominous here and that they need to take this much more seriously. Apocalypse lays his sins bare before the Quiet Council, the things we learned in X-Men number 12 about how he sacrificed his wife, his children, his family, not only them, but mutants of what he describes as godlike, whose names we have never heard, were all surrendered to stop the threat that originally almost destroyed not only Okara, but the entire world. Now, Kate does bring up that, maybe they should close the external gate, but if they close it, does that necessarily mean that they're cut off from Otherworld? There has to be other ways, to which we do know there is another way. Jamie Braddock, who has become the new king of Avalon, he has a gate of his own, which leads Professor X to ask why have a second larger gate, and Apocalypse reveals that that one is completely different. That gate is not controlled by Krakoa. And not only is it not controlled by Krakoa, but Apocalypse believes that the access to the gate is not limited to mutants. Which of course, that leads the White Queen, Magneto, and Sebastian Shaw to do something that they probably never thought they would ever do in a lifetime, and that's agree on something. It should be destroyed. Now, I do want to point out that of everyone who raises their hands that the gate should be destroyed, notice the people whose hands do not raise. Storm and Marvel Girl, their hands do not raise, nor does Kate Pride's. However, there is one person who vehemently disagrees with destroying the gate. Krakoa says that you need to understand that you are guest here. Our coexistence is collaborative and wonderful. It's a union of shared interest. But I am the land, and the land is mine. To which Xavier realizes, whoa, Skip, we might have been a little hasty. We can still make this work. It's just that Arakko has fallen and it's probably a lost cause. To which Krakoa reveals that unless there is a greater known threat, the gate stays open, and Magneto figures that Apocalypse knew this was going to be the case. He figured that Apocalypse was up to something and that the Quiet Council's decree will stand, that they are not going to send anyone on this mission. He does not have their blessing to carry out his mission, and when he does so against their wishes. And Apocalypse makes it plain. He will just simply ask for volunteers. He's not going to expect the Quiet Council to, grant him some army to go through that gate. And the ones who will crash the gate with him will be a lot of the characters we saw on the Hanged Man's card. We will see characters like Rockslide, Havoc. We will also see Polaris, who apparently was voluntold to go on this mission by her father. And Havoc saying that since the Quiet Council has forbade this mission to take place, Cyclops, who is a captain commander, is not allowed to go on it. And it also explains why characters like Magic aren't being sent, nor Gorgon or Bishop, because they are also captains. We notice that Richter, who is inseparable of Apocalypse, which is very interesting considering how much Richter wanted nothing to do with Apocalypse at the beginning of Excalibur, and now they have pretty much become bosom buddies. Apocalypse has helped Richter level up his powers and basically save himself from self-annihilation. Siren is going along because her father was harmed and she wants to see exactly what got to him. And then of course we know that Beast is coming along for the ride, and so too is Angel, though not in his angel persona, but as Archangel, which I think this is a big move considering the fact that we know Angel throughout his history has not been overly fond of his Archangel persona, and he has willingly taken this up, basically allowing us to know that, this is a sacrifice. This is all leading back to that card that we saw, giving up something. Monet, well, she's never been to Otherworld and she just simply wants to go. And as they go through the gate, Apocalypse himself sees the Arakan Horde. They all see Eunice, the Untouchable, being strung up on the cross shaped like an X, not unlike what we saw in X-Men number 12. And Apocalypse sees his children. He sees the original recipe for horsemen of the apocalypse, and that he must speak to them. And when he approaches them, he prostrates himself before them. He falls on bended knee, letting them know that he has missed them, that he never thought that this moment would ever happen, that he would ever see them again. And you can kind of already tell that something is up, because as they speak to him, they simply tell him to stand, that we want to see you how we remember you, as a titan, as a god. And Apocalypse, but he has so many questions. He wants to know how they survived, how they lived, what had they been through, and they have nothing but nightmares to share with him. The fact that they survived what they went through was no miracle, and that their mother is gone, destroyed, that she fell under the Twilight Blade, referring to what Summoner referred to as her meeting Annihilation in combat and then dying at Annihilation's hand. But death does reveal that there was no avoiding the things that came. It was always going to go the way it did, and nothing would have ever changed that. And even though Apocalypse apologizes, War reveals that regret is for the weak, and we were born strong. In that place, only the fit survive, and here we are. And then ask Apocalypse, would he like to know the one thing that kept us alive all these years? It wasn't love. And before I reveal her answer, I want to go back a little bit and talk about Banshee. Because you see, they took Banshee to the Healing Gardens, but something was up. Rachel Gray had this nagging suspicion that there was more to what was going on than what we realized. And when Cable approaches, they both decide to enter Banshee's mind to see what really happened. And when they did, they see the moment when Summoner, Eunice, and Banshee crossed through the gate. When they crossed through the gate, the Arakan Horde did not attack them. Summoner stepped forward and met with the flag bearer of the Arakan army. And not only did he meet with them, he met with the original 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. One of the things you gotta remember, and this is something I think a lot of people overlook, War is his mother. Of course, he would be on the side of them, and what they see is the moment that Banshee and Eunice were turned on, when Summoner turns and reveals his ominous smile. Of course it was a trap. I told y'all it was gonna be a trap. I told you that this was gonna happen. Y'all tried to say, oh no, Blerd, you're overthinking it. You're overthinking it. Oh no. You're out of pocket. You're just making things up. No, this is exactly what was gonna happen. Y'all need to start listening to me, damn it. And now that we know about Summoner's treachery, so it comes as no small surprise that War and Summoner mortally wound Apocalypse, leading to an all-out battle, Siren literally being the one thing that saved Apocalypse from taking any more L's than he already was. And Queen Saturnine, she seems a little bit distracted. She seems like she wasn't really all there. We're gonna talk about that here in just a minute. There's other things I wanna get to before we get to that. Something really important comes up that has been teased over the last 2 issues of X-Men number 11 and number 12, where we saw Summoner playing that game about weaknesses. And of course, Rockslide surely remembers Summoner's weakness being his eyes, being the only vulnerable spot on his body. But there's something else about Summoner that Rockslide doesn't know. He is a summoner of many things, not just monsters. He can summon weapons as well. And when he does so, he summons a sword of his own and slices Rockslide in half, recounting basically the weakness that he saw in Rockslide, that Rockslide was not 100% solid rock, that there was an energy core inside him, likely realizing that not only is that energy core there, but that means he does technically know where to strike him down and kill him. Everyone is taking L's in this one. Heck, even Richter takes an arrow to the chest. Siren and Archangel are trying to get Apocalypse and Richter to safety, and Beast is trying to lead the retreat back to Krakoa. The only ones left standing to fight the good fight are Monet, Polaris, and Havoc. And they're fighting for everything that they're worth, and Monet notices that Saturnine is watching from the Starlight Citadel and doing nothing. That she doesn't seem interested at all in the slightest in trying to help them, even though the Arakan Horde is going to destroy the Starlight Citadel if nothing is done to stop them. And though Saturnine has the power to disrupt Monet's telepathic message, even knocking her on her ass as a result, there's one thing that Citadel is made of, and Polaris can control it. There's plenty of metal coursing through it, and she is able to bring it low. But that's just the thing. Saturnine wanted that, because we're actually told earlier in this book that the Starlight Citadel is basically the spoke in the wheel of the multiverse and all the various realms of Otherworld. We're told that it doesn't move. Despite the fact that it doesn't move, the world and the multiverse rotate around it. That was something that I think was very important that a lot of people probably won't catch. And the fact that Polaris was able to move it, it actually did exactly what Saturnine wanted. And Saturnine freezes the entire battlefield. Both enemy, friend, foe, whatever. She doesn't care. She wants to speak with Death, and she wants to know what is it that they want. Even manipulating Death's body, seemingly reversing his aging process in some strange way, turning him into what I'm going to assume is merely a childlike form. But Death doesn't relent. He tells her exactly what they want, that they are willing to destroy everything, that they are willing to destroy whoever and whatever to get Araco and Krakoa back together, to take Krakoa back as it is rightfully theirs. And considering Death's conviction in all this, Saturnine allows him to continue. They will have a battle of champions. They will be allowed to have trial by combat for the fate of Otherworld as well as Krakoa. But who will be Otherworld's champions? Well, it's obvious. It'll be the X-Men. Polaris realizes that, yeah, this is probably gonna have to happen, that we have no choice in this matter, and Saturnine reveals that all of this was preordained. Then there is no choice. You must fight. And then she reveals the true meaning of the Ten of Swords, or at least one of its true meanings. That not only is it alluded to the tarot, not only is it alluded to the swords, but it is also alluded to the fact that not only are there 10 swords, but there are 10 swords for both sides. And both sides recant the swords that they must obtain. Whereas the original 4 horsemen must obtain the Twilight Blade, Mercy, Vermilion, the Red Sword of War, Colony, the Black Bone of Amduat, Seducer, Pog, Purity, Alluvium, and Muramasa. Now, one thing I want to point out, there is a little bit of crossover in the swords they must obtain, that crossover being Muramasa, a blade that Polaris names, the Sword of Might, the Starlight Sword, Grass Cutter, God Killer, Warlock, the Soul Sword, the Scarab, the Light of Galador, and Skybreaker. Now, something tells me that each of these swords is likely going to be in some way, shape, form, or fashion. They are going to be sides of a similar coin, hence why maybe Muramasa is listed twice. And we know that some of the swords are already collected. Now, whatever the case is, they have 3 days. 3 days to collect each of their swords and then return and do battle for the fate of Otherworld and Krakoa. They must find the swords, choose their champions wisely, and I'm pretty sure we know who those champions are going to be. They are likely the very same champions that we saw on the actual Ten of Swords card. Apocalypse, Cable, Wolverine, Magic, Captain Britain, Storm, Magneto, what I believe is very likely Cypher. I also think that one of the ones hiding in the background is also Jamie Braddock, and the one carrying the 2 swords I believe might be Gorgon. I could be wrong, who knows? But that said, we're not done by a damn sight. The reason why Saturnine was originally distracted when the Arakans and the X-Men were doing battle with one another, it was because she was speaking with Prestige and Cable. She sent them a vision of something they needed to collect, sending them on a chase where they go and they collect Marvel Girl and Cyclops to take them somewhere that is not that far away, but somewhere they're gonna have to do a little skipping around to get to. They have to travel back to Earth, and where they travel to, it looks kind of vaguely familiar. It's a decommissioned base, one that has translocators that are able to take them somewhere that we haven't seen in a while. And where they wind up going, they're gonna need a power source to restart this wherever the hell it is they are. And the Light of Galador just so happens to be what the doctor ordered. This device sitting in the center actually has a slot just for the light of Galador. And Cable has it, so why not use it? And when they do so, it sets off something in space. And what could that be? Well, you know, when we were on the Comic Book Herald prediction stream for Ten of Swords, Comic Book Herald founder Dave Busing actually brought up the fact that there was a secret title that we were going to be getting, something that had been kind of hidden away, though if you actually know where to look, you can actually find a little bit of information about it. And since Ten of Swords has released, there is more information about it now because it was technically a spoiler for this comic. And this is in reference to the fact that a sword base has now been activated. And this is actually in reference to the comic that is going to be releasing at the end of Ten of Swords that is going to be titled Sword. A comic whose cast will include not only stalwart sword alum Abigail Brand, but also Magneto, Cable, Frenzy, WizKid, Fabian Cortez, and Manifold. And of course, other characters are also rumored to be joining in on this one. And I gotta admit, I'm actually kind of excited. I'm actually looking forward to seeing, especially Frenzy and Manifold, being a part of this. So I'm definitely in. I've always liked those two characters. And I think they need to be used more. That doesn't really have as much to do with the rest of the end of this, but there's a lot of setup here. But basically, if you go back to it, yeah, a lot of the stuff we predicted in that stream is coming to pass. A lot of it, a ton of it. But anyways, let me know what you thought about Ten of Swords Creation number 1 by Jonathan Hickman, Teenie Howard, and Pepe Larraz. Wash your damn hands and sound off in the comments.
So hey, you made it to the end of the video. Awesome for you. If you enjoyed this video, and if you made it this far, I don't see how you didn't, do me a favor. Hulk smash that like button. And if you want to see more awesome videos like this one, make sure you click subscribe so you can become one of Earth's mightiest subscribers, and tap that bell so you know when I post up. Also, feel free to go check out my Patreon, where if you chuck in a buck, you can get early access to most of my videos up to a week early. And if you have time, make sure you swing by nerd901.com, where you can find more of my content as well as other amazing stuff. Anyways, until next time, I love you 3000 plus ultra.